Hi, welcome to Jovie's home. Today I'm going to talk about the different types of leave that you are legally entitled to as a person who lives and works in the Netherlands. I'm going to specifically tailor this video for parents and parenting because that is what my channel is about. But I want to educate you, especially if you are living in the Netherlands and you don't know about your legal entitlements. That is what we're going to talk about today. So if that sounds interesting to you, then come on in, kick off your shoes and stay a while. I'm really glad you're here. Today we are going to cover 5 different types of leave that kind of apply for parents. Some are only for the mother, and then others are for both mother and father, but we're going to get into that now. So the first type, No. Before we get into the types of leaves, I have to do the disclaimers, the typical YouTube disclaimers. I am not an HR person and I am not fluent in Dutch. So when I tell you this is from experience and research, and certainly I ran through my notes with a Dutch HR person so that she has confirmed that the content is correct. I am filming this video in 2019, so if you're watching it in 2023, things may have changed. But yeah, and while I do have a background in law, my background is not in Dutch law. So some of these things, there might be nuances that are specific to your employer or something, but I'm gonna cover kind of the general rules. All right, maternity leave. So when you are pregnant, of course you're gonna get some maternity leave. In the Netherlands, you are entitled to a minimum of 16 weeks of maternity leave. But that doesn't mean 16 weeks from the moment that your baby is born. By law, you must stop working 4 weeks before your baby's due date. There is no wiggling around this issue. You must stop working 4 weeks before the baby's due date. Now, you might be having a more difficult pregnancy or a more challenging pregnancy, and in which case you may, if you choose, stop working 6 weeks or 5 weeks before your due date. So anytime between 4 and 6 weeks before your baby is due, you can choose to stop working. Now, the time that you stop working has an effect on how many weeks you get after the baby is born. So let's say that you stop working 4 weeks before your baby is due, and then the baby comes on the due date, you get 12 weeks. So the 4 weeks before, 12 weeks after, totaling your 16 weeks. If you stop working 6 weeks before the due date, and then your baby is born on the due date, you get 10 weeks afterwards, totaling the 16 weeks. However, if you stop working 6 weeks before, and then your baby is, for example, 2 weeks late, then you will still get 10 weeks afterwards with your baby. So that would be 6 weeks before plus 2 weeks late, that's 8 weeks, plus 10 weeks after the baby is born. So you would actually get 18 weeks in this scenario. That's more rare, but this is how the calculation kind of works. The 16 weeks, or let's say 18 weeks, this is paid at 100% of your salary. So you get paid 100% of your salary. You are not allowed to be fired during your maternity leave. This is against the law. You cannot just suddenly lose your job while you're on maternity leave. Once you go back to work, if you are a breastfeeding or a nursing mom, if you're choosing to feed your baby like that, then you are also legally entitled to have time at work to pump. And currently that is set at 25% of your working hours. So if you work an 8-hour day, you get 2 hours to pump. Or if you live close to where you work or the daycare is close to where you work, you may choose to use these maximum of 2 hours to maybe go and nurse your baby at the daycare or go home and nurse your baby at home or wherever your child might be. So you can choose how you want to use these 2 hours, whether it's pumping at work or feeding your child wherever your child might be. You can also discuss with your employer to, for example, come into work 1 hour later and leave work 1 hour earlier because you are going to be using this for nursing time. And this is also paid at 100% of your salary, and this is you are legally entitled to this until your child is 9 months old. Once your child is 9 months old, then that's a discussion you have with your employer, but legally, up until the baby is 9 months old, you are entitled to this nursing or pumping time to be paid. If you are pumping at work, your employer must provide you with a clean, safe space, private space for you to pump. There are some things that this pumping room must have, which is a chair, a table, and a fridge where you can place your milk. It does not need to be a fridge in the whole building where everyone is putting their lunch and then here's your breast milk. No, there should be a fridge in the, let's call it the pumping room, that is specifically for nursing mothers, for their own milk to be in a clean, safe area away from, you know, your colleagues' lunch. Your employer may not force you to pump in the toilet, for example. Tell you, well, we don't have an office or we don't have a private room, so you pump in the toilet. That is against the law. No, you can demand to have a conference room or a room specially set aside. You know, kick the CEO out of his office, close the door while you are pumping. That is your right. You do not need to, you know, go and pump in the toilet. That is no. You hear that, employers? Don't make moms pump in the freaking toilet. Whew, sorry. Furthermore, this pumping time does not count as your lunch time also. So if you get a half an hour break, then you can pump for 2 hours, plus take your half an hour break and then work the remaining time. They cannot say, well, pump during your lunch and eat at your desk. Nope, not allowed. So now we've covered mother's maternity leave. What about dad's or the non-birth giving partner? They are entitled legally to 2 days. There is a discussion to change this now to 5 days for dads. But that's, you know, legally dads are allowed 2 days of leave after their child is born. For both maternity and paternity leave, the amount of time that you get is the same whether you have 1 baby, 2, 3. It's you get the same amount of time. So it's not that, you know, with 1 baby you get 16 weeks and with twins you get 32 weeks. It doesn't work quite like that. The next type of leave that we're going to talk about today is called parental leave, or in Dutch it's the ouderschapsverlof. Oof, that's a mouthful, but it is. That's what it's called. So this is like a math related one. The allowance of parental leave is 26 times the number of working hours in your contract. So if you work 40 hours a week, it's going to be 40 hours times 26, which equals 1,040 hours. That is the amount of parental leave that you will have. However, if you work, let's say 24 hours a week, then 24 hours times 26 equals 624, and that would be your allowance. So whatever number of hours you work, multiply that by 26, and that is the amount of time that you have as parental leave. You are legally entitled to use this parental leave in whatever way you choose up until your child is actually 8 years old. So whether that is, you know, that you want to take 1 day off a week and stay home with your child so they go to daycare or whatever 1 day less, that is an option. Some parents instead prefer to just work normal, but then when their children are in school, like take a few extra weeks in the summer to take care of their children, you know, when they're on school vacations, things like this. So how you want to do it, it's up to you, but you discuss this with your employer. While you are legally entitled to this number of hours, your employer must agree to the structure. If they, you know, if you want to have 2 days a week off and there is a financial burden on the company, if they allow you to do this, they are able to say no and to deny that. However, they should come back to you with another proposal as to how they would be able to accommodate some kind of parental leave for you. So while you are legally entitled to this, the company has to demonstrate a significant financial burden or a really economic reason for them to deny you in case they do deny you. This allowance of 26 times the number of working hours in your contract, that is per child. So, you know, with your first child, you get 26 times 40. If you're working full-time, the second child, you get that again. So as long as you take the parental leave that is associated to your child up until that child is 8, then you know, it kind of builds. However, this leave for most people is unpaid because the company can choose to pay you. They can pay you fully if they want to, or part-time, or you know, some kind of percentage if they want. But for most companies, this parental leave is unpaid. In addition, this not only is it unpaid, but if, let's say, for the sake of the math, if you are working 5 days a week and then you stop working 1 day, or you take it as a parental leave day, then your salary will go down 20% because you are working 20% less. So yes, you will have your day off, but your salary goes down in correspondence with that. There are some questions, or I've heard some questions, there is confusion between, do I take parental leave or do I just go ahead and adjust my contract? If your employer is willing to let you work part-time, so what is the difference between going from 40 hours in my contract with 1 day of parental leave per week, or if I just immediately agree with my employer that I will work 4 days? There is a difference, and I will explain that now. Using parental leave as a way to work part-time guarantees you some additional benefits that maybe just straight away going to a part-time contract would not afford you. The first thing is that at any time, you are able to go back to the number of working hours that was stipulated in your contract. So again, using the full-time model, if you were working full-time and that is in your contract, and then you take 1 day per week of parental leave, so then you are essentially working 32 hours a week, and you are being paid for those 32 hours. However, in your contract, you still officially are working 40 hours. If at some point you choose to, or you need to go back to working the 40 hours, if you are on the parental leave scheme, your employer cannot deny you. They cannot say, oh, well, for the last, 2 years, you've been working 4 days a week, and now that's much better for us. We pay you less, and that's fine. So we don't agree that you come back full time. Nope, not allowed. They cannot do that. Whereas if you straight away come back from maternity leave or whatever, and then you say, oh, I want to work 32 hours, and your employer changes your contract to 32 hours, then in whatever time you say, oh, I do actually want to go back to being full-time, they can deny you that request. So it is in your interest to maintain this parental leave and protect your contract, your employment contract, so that should you be in a situation that you need to or want to go back to work to the number of hours that is in your contract, you are legally entitled to, and your employer can't say no. Another area where having the parental leave in place, where that will help you, is, for example, if at some point you lose your job and you do need to end up going for unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits are calculated on the number of hours that is in your contract and not in the number of hours you are actually working. So again, your unemployment benefits would be calculated at 40 hours a week and not 32 hours a week if you're using parental leave. If you've adjusted your contract and now you are working the 4 days a week and you have a 32-hour contract, then your unemployment benefits are calculated at 32 hours a week. The last point that I want to make in favor of going for parental leave as opposed to adjusting your contract is in terms of pension. So your pension contributions are based on the number of working hours, again, in your contract. That is linked to your contract and not to how many hours you're actually working. So if you are taking parental leave, your employer is still going to be paying into your pension fund, or however, into your pension fund based on your full-time contract and not the actual 32 hours a week that you're working. So it is, again, in your interest to use up all of your parental leave entitlement for the reasons I've just outlined, as opposed to coming back and then boom, straight away going to a part-time contract. Two things that I do want to mention where the parental leave does affect your other than your salary, where you would be affected if you take parental leave, and that is on your holiday, the number of days that you have as holidays, and also your holiday allowance. So this is just a sidebar, but I'm just going to quickly cover these two things. In the Netherlands, in 2019, the statutory minimum for the number of holidays or vacation days that you have is 25 if you have a full-time contract. So if you work full-time, you get 25 days. Now, if you go down to working 4 days a week, so that's 20% less, then your 25 days of holiday, you would also get that at 25% less. 20% less. So how much ever less you're working, that corresponds to the number of holidays that you have. Another thing that is the law in the Netherlands is that employers have to pay what's called holiday allowance, and that is calculated at 8% of your salary, or that is like whether they pay that once a year. Some employers pay it once a year, and others choose to pay it a couple of times a year, or some choose to pay it in your salary every month. It depends, but you are statutorily obligated as an employer to provide holiday pay or holiday allowance. It is 8%. But if you're on parental leave and your salary goes down by 20% because you're working 1 day a week less, then your holiday allowance or your holiday pay is going to be pro rata with your salary. So you still get 8%, but you get 8% of your new salary. Does that make sense? I think you guys follow. If there's any questions about this, please leave them below, because I want you to know your rights. I want you to be fully aware of everything that is out there for you in the Netherlands. So please leave them below. The very last thing that I'm gonna just touch upon quickly about parental leave is that this is something that also fathers can take. So this is, both parents are entitled to this leave, not shared. You each get 26 times the number of working hours in your contract. It is very, very, very common in the Netherlands that you have the mom, let's say, working Monday through Thursday, and then she takes Fridays off, and then the dads are working Tuesday through Friday, and they're taking Mondays off. So there's a mama day and a papa day with the kids, and then the kids are in daycare for 3 days a week. This is because both parents are utilizing their parental leave. So each of you is entitled to that, and culturally, and if you're a Dutch, and I hope I'm not offending you by saying this, but I think culturally in the Netherlands, it is very encouraged for parents to do this kind of, mama day, papa day, part-time work. It is supported and encouraged. The third thing that we're going to talk about, the third type of leave, is called care leave or compassionate short-term leave. This is, for example, if your child is ill and you need to stay home and take care of them, or something happens at the daycare and you need to run over and collect them and something happens, you are entitled to this. You have an entitlement of 12 days per year for short-term compassionate leave. Statutorily, so you must be paid at least 70% of your salary, although some, or even let's say most employers, pay you 100% of your salary for these 12 days. You can take them, if your child is sick for 1 day, you take 1 day, or if they're sick for a week, you take 5 days, but you get 12 in a year of this short-term compassionate care leave. Each parent gets this leave, so, each caregiver, I don't want to presume that it's a mom and dad setup, so each of the two parental figures of the child's life, they each get 12 days, so a total of 24 between the two. Short-term compassionate leave is not only for one parent, it applies to both parents, and it doesn't only apply for caring for your children, it can also apply for caring for each other. So if, for example, mom has a C-section during labor, the partner may apply for some short-term care leave, compassionate leave, in order to care for the mother after she has given birth. So this is really if there is somebody in your family that depends on you for taking care of them. So whether that's a minor or, your spouse or your partner, this is the kind of leave that you would take and have covered under the short-term care leave scheme. The fourth type of leave that I'm going to cover today is called emergency leave. And this is the type of leave that is for unforeseen personal emergency circumstances. So that can be something as simple as, it's never simple, right? Like emergencies are never simple, but it can be something, for example, your heater broke and you need to go home and wait for the, mechanic. And it's the middle of winter. Like that is short-term emergency leave. Not short-term. No, that is emergency leave. Or, something happens and you just gotta rush home or go to school because something happens with your child. If you need to take this unforeseen personal circumstance, you can leave work and it's okay. It can range from a few hours to a few days. For example, also a death in the family might be covered under the emergency leave. It is paid at 100% of your salary, but it must be reasonable. So if you've had let's using the example of your heating breaks and you need to leave work and the mechanic comes and they fix your heating in one day, you're not going to get a week off as emergency leave. It's for the duration of your emergency that you have this type of leave. The last type of leave that we're going to cover today in this video is called sick leave. And this is not only for, every employee in the Netherlands, regardless of whether they're a parent or not, is entitled to sick leave. In general, when you are sick, I'm talking from cold to whatever, when you are sick, when you cannot go to work because you're ill, you would go to your family doctor or your house arts or house doctor and see what they say. Sometimes they tell you, just go home, take some paracetamol, which is Tylenol if you're in America or Canada. If you're in Europe, you know what paracetamol is. It's the same, just different name. But kind of go home, you're on bed rest for a week until you get better. You have the flu, you cannot work, go ahead. So that is one thing. Your home doctor is not allowed to give you like a letter to say that you're sick. They're not legally entitled to do that. Pretty much if you're gonna be out for a week because you have the flu, you would just call up your employer and say, look, I've seen my doctor today, I have the flu, I'm gonna be out for 5 days, and good enough, that's fine. Some employers might want to have some more information about it, but in general, this like a week, it's okay. Anything more than that, so anything more serious than a week of being out of work, you're gonna need to see a specific type of doctor that the Netherlands has, which is called an arbo-arts, or it's kind of like an employment doctor, or a doctor that deals only with sick employees. So your job would report you as sick to the entity that is responsible for this, and then you get a letter in the mail saying, okay, we know you're sick, here's your appointment to go and see the arbo doctor, and here's their address. And then you show up there and you have a discussion with the doctor about whatever is going on, and then based on the doctor's assessment of you, they would write a letter back to your employer saying, I've seen this patient, and it is my medical opinion that they're going to be out for 6 weeks. I will have a follow-up appointment within 6 weeks, and so for 6 weeks, they're not working. Your employer is obligated to then follow what this arbo doctor has suggested. What you should know is that while you're on sick leave, you may not be fired, your job is safe, your salary and all of your benefits continue at 100%. The reason that I bring it up here in parenting is because I had a personal experience with having to take sick leave during my pregnancy. I had a complicated second pregnancy, more complicated than my first one, and I could not work for a period of 3 months. I was really worried what would happen. How was my employer gonna react to suddenly I'm not there for 3 months? My job was safe. I was protected by these employment rules that are in place, and that allowed me to focus on trying to get better and not just panicking that I was gonna be fired or something happens. If you are sick and you are attending, your meetings with the ARBO doctor, and the ARBO doctor is, agreeing that you are sick, you are able to be on sick leave for up to 2 years. With your having your job 100% safe and having 100% of your salary. I mean, most people are not going to be out for a period of 2 years, but those are the rules in 2019. The ARBO doctor is not going to specifically in his assessment or her assessment send a letter to your company saying like, oh yes, I saw patient X and my diagnosis is this, this, and this. It's not in that kind of detail, but they would say, yes, I confirm that there is a medical issue happening. It is my professional opinion that XYZ should be away from work for a period of, let's say, 6 weeks. After those 6 weeks, I would suggest that the employee comes back, working maybe 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day, and for the first week, and then the next week, 2 hours a day, and then the next week, 3 hours a day, or whatever it is that the doctor would, suggest as how you come back. You would see the ARBO doctor while you're sick as an additional doctor, not as a replacement doctor. So if you're having like a pregnancy related symptom like I was still under the care of the OBGYN and some other people. And then in addition, I was going to the ARBO doctor, and then I would tell him, well, this is what's happening at my gynecology appointment, and this is what happened with this other meeting. So that based on that, he was able to diagnose what was happening in connection with these other people. So it was certainly not just that he was doing, my pregnancy related issues. No, that is not what an ARBO doctor does. So the last thing that I want to talk about as it relates to sick leave is what happens if, for example, you are on your family holidays and then you get sick during your holidays, or your child gets sick during your holidays. The Netherlands I feel like this is such an incredibly generous law for employees. Basically, the law says that you should be able to enjoy 25 days of holidays. Now, if you fall sick during your holidays, and let's say you can document this by showing that, you went to the hospital, or the, hotel doctor came to visit you, or, something happened with your child, they, broke an arm or something when they were on holiday, and then you could not have the actual period to rest and recover during your holiday. That is what holidays are for. If you can document how many days you were not able to enjoy your holidays, then you get those added back. Those would count as sick leave and not as holiday. So just for clarity, let's say that you go away for 5 days of vacation, something happens on day 3, so for 2 days you are not able to enjoy. That means that when you come back, you will have only taken 3 days of holiday time or vacation time and 2 days of sick leave. All right, guys, that covers it. Those are the 5 types of leave that I think apply in parental situations or parenting situations. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that having this knowledge makes you feel more confident and more comfortable. I know that, if you are watching this video, most likely you, like me, are not a Dutch person. Maybe you're an expat who's come here and you wonder what you can do or how you're going to care for your child without your extended family around. Hopefully knowing this makes you feel more confident and better equipped. Excuse the noise from the builders. That's it, you guys. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming over. I am grateful to you. Please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful. Hit that notification bell, and I will see you next time you guys come over. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.